This man was a Muslim, but he's now a follower and a believer in Jesus Christ. What happened to him? You'll find out as Shahbaz shares his story next on Good News for Muslims. Welcome back to Good News for Muslims. This is part 7 of a 13-part series, and this is the program that we've announced in the past, and many of you have been waiting for it. This is the time when Shahbaz will share his story. It's called My Journey to Peace, as we find out what happened to this man many years ago that just turned his life around. So Shahbaz, welcome again. I've introduced you numerous times, and probably no need to go back over all that. But you've told us some about your life, that you grew up in Iran, quite different from where I grew up in California, and just a lot of things happened to you. So I'm just going to turn you loose in this segment and have you just open your heart and talk to people about how you grew up and what happened to you.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me,
Sure.
Steve. I've been enjoying these programs doing them with you.
Yeah, we are.
It's been a pleasure. And as a young child, around the age of 4, I was always fascinated with the concept of who God is. Even at that age, 4 or 5 years, even at 4, I would look up in the sky and I would wonder, who's this creator God that created everything? I want to know him. I want to know what he looks like. And I didn't know what he looks like, obviously. And I didn't have a reference point. My only reference point was the mosque and the mullahs and the ayatollahs. Did God look like them? And or was he just energy, bright light? It just was a fascinating thing for me. And I recall even during the snowfall in the winter in Tehran, we're in a high elevation, so we get snow there. And I used to look at the snowflakes or look at the blue sky and look at that as a fingerprint of God. And I was just about 5.
Really?
And because of my fascination with God and religion, my family used to call me Haji boy. Haji in Iran is a term used for someone who has gone on the Hajj or to the pilgrimage to the city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia, and they become Haji. And so they get this white hat and they've done their responsibility and duty, which is part of the following the Sharia, the 5 pillars, actually, the 5 pillars of Islam. One of them is going to the Hajj. But I'd never gone, but my family called me that. They called me Haji boy because they knew that I was very religious, and they would kind of pinch me and say, Haji boy, Haji boy.
Really? Now tell us about your family, your mom, your dad,
siblings.
siblings.
My brothers and my sisters, we grew up in a home that my mother was very religious. She had her secular side, but she firmly and was devoted to God and to Allah and to Islam. And she's the one who instilled within us, within me and my siblings, about Islam and prayer and how to pray and all that stuff.
And what about your dad?
My father was also, he believed in God, but he was more on the secular side. He was a businessman. He had his own business and very successful. And
what kind of business was he in?
He was an engineer, and he was more into having fun and all that. And God had His place in his life, but he was like that. But it was my mom that was the one that actually put the foundation in us.
And what branch of Islam were you?
We were Shia Muslims in Iran, and we believed in the 12 Imams, and we believed in the final Imam Mahdi that would come at the end of the world and to judge the world. And
that's sort of a Muslim prophecy.
that's
or
a Muslim prophecy.
That's what they believe about the end times,
That's
which
correct.
we're going to talk about that in another
Later.
program
And that's
before we're done.
that was our beliefs. And those things fascinated me. So much so that as I grew older, I became more and more firm in my desire to one day want to serve Allah like an apostle, be an apostle for Allah, be an imam. I don't know what it would be, but I desired to serve Him. I didn't know exactly which direction it would take me, and I would imagine and fantasy. My greatest fantasy was to preach for Him. And
Did you go to Muslim schools?
no, I did not. I went to regular government schools and all that. But at the age of 7, something amazing happened. We were visiting our summer home in north of Iran on the coast of Caspian Sea. And my father had a villa there, and we were there, and that evening we were going to watch a movie. This movie is an American movie called The Robe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a movie from the 50s. And this is back in the time of the Shah, before the revolution. And this is the closest Iranian television ever got to Jesus on the cross. This movie is not about Jesus, it's about the soldier that actually finally ended up with Jesus' robe. But at the end of this, towards the end of the movie, the soldier is standing at the foot of the cross. They never show Jesus, they just show his feet. And Jesus dies, and the earth shakes, and all of these things. And this man says, this Roman soldier turns to Jesus, says, "This man has died for the world." And in that moment, I was just lost immersed in this love that suddenly hit me. Jesus, the great prophet of Christians, has died for the world. Why? I was 7 years old. My parents didn't faze them or anyone else. It just fazed me.
And your whole family was watching this.
No, everybody was watching.
So tell us again, how many brothers and sisters do you have?
We are 5.
Five altogether?
Yes, and we're all sitting there in the living room watching this.
And there are boys, girls?
Yeah, we have 4 boys and 1 girl. And
that's the same as you have.
Yes, right.
That's
Exact
something.
same thing. It's amazing. And
Must be in the genes.
I think it is something that my dad's.
And now,
genes
which
are.
one were you? Were you the baby?
I
Were
was
you
the
middle?
last.
You were
I
the
was
last
the
one.
last.
So
Yeah.
you were the younger,
And it seems like
brother.
God went after the last. Usually in the Bible, you see it's the last one.
Like
that,
David. David was the last one.
And Joseph was the last one, and all that stuff. Well, he was almost last. There was one more after him, but so I fell in love with Jesus right there, and
Right
on
there.
the spot. I fell in love with this man that died for the world. I didn't know why he died for the world. I knew the world meant me and my family and everyone else, and all those that were dear to me. And
So at that point, you didn't know
No, there
really
were-
about what Islam thought so much about Jesus, or things that we've talked about, like whether he really did or didn't die on the cross, and whether he really was or wasn't the Son of God. Those issues were not part of your
they were
7-year-old thinking.
non-issue in my mind. I wasn't even thinking about those
It was
things.
just the movie and the glimmer
Yeah.
that you had of
I
him.
understood at the age of 7 that Jesus is not the Son of God as a Muslim. That's what was taught me. But to know that this prophet has died for the world, I believed it. And the Holy Spirit used that movie to reach my mind. And that changed my perspective of Christ. And often that scene kept coming back to my mind through my life before I became a Christian. And then at the age of 11, we immigrated to the US, and we lived here for about a year, and then went back to Iran again. And when we went back to Iran, when I was a year after that, we went back to Iran. My parents wanted us to go to an American school so we can continue learning English, because we had spent a year in the US. Now we can't waste that. We gotta get our English better. So we went to sign up at the American school north of Tehran, and they had no space for us. They was packed, full, completely full. But they recommended another school not far from there, 10-minute drive. My mom drove over there, and as we got close to the school, I noticed right above the school wall this iron sign made out of iron, just a big board of metal, and on it said Adventist School. And I was just surprised. What does that mean, Adventist? I never heard that word before. And my mom drove us there. We knew my mom said it's a Christian school. but we didn't know what denomination or anything like that. They had space. They took us. We went there. 80%.
And your parents were fine with
They're
you
fine.
going to a Christian school?
Yeah, they were fine. 80% of the student body was Muslim, and they did not teach the Bible to us. In fact, they even had a Quranic class, a Quran class
In the Adventist school.
In the Adventist school, but the school principal he wanted to witness for Christ. So I remember one day one of our teachers was sick and didn't come to school, and he came into class and he had us all rise and he said, "Follow me. Your teacher is sick. Oh, you come with me." And then we followed him down the corridor and down the steps into the yard. He took us back all the way to the end of the property. It was a big property, 3-4 acres. And there was a chapel there. And then the Muslims had never been into that chapel, but he took us in there. And he took us there to have us sit down. I sat on the first time I had sat on a pew. And I'd seen it in movies, and it was like fascinating. Wow, I'm actually sitting on one of these long chairs. Chairs are supposed to be private. One individual sits on one chair. But here is a pew that 5-6 people can sit, and it kind of spoke to me of a community of believers. And he began to preach to us, and that sermon that he preached affected me greatly, and that was my second encounter with Christ. But I didn't become a Christian. He didn't ask us to. Just felt that Jesus is more important than I'd ever anticipated him to be. But I was still a Muslim, and I didn't want to become a Christian. I was a defender of Islam.
And you were how old again at this point?
At this point, I'm almost 13 years old.
13.
And
was your brother with you?
Yes, my twin brother was there. But it didn't faze him like it fazed me. I was affected by all of this, but he wasn't. And he's my twin. He's older than me. And so what happened was the revolution happened. Iran is in turmoil. We moved to the U.S. because of that in 1979, and we live here in California. And we went to school, and in school, my Christian friends tried to convince me about Jesus.
And what school was that? Which school? Public school?
This one was a private school in Walnut Creek, California. But then
Walnut Creek. Now
that's close to Concord and Bay Area, close to San Francisco.
Okay, the Bay Area.
Yeah,
I used to live in Pacifica, just south of San Francisco.
Yeah.
And 1979 was when I first started reading the Bible for myself too. So
well, I know exactly what Pacifica is,
and I used to live right there.
That was my turf later on when I was older, all that area and all that. And but what happened was a significant event happened in my life that really changed the course of life for me in a major way, and that was when I was 17 years old, and I was sitting in my home. My brother at the time was sick. He needed to take medication. He had emotional problems, and if he didn't take his medicine, he would become violent, and he wouldn't take his medicine. And we pled with him, my mom, my brothers, myself. We all begged him to take his medication, and he wouldn't. And in my desperation, I went to the dining room, and I sat at the dining room table, and I started to pray to Allah. And I called all the Muslim imams to come and help make my brother take his medication. My brother was sitting to my right in the living room.
So you're not, you mean you called them on the phone?
No, I called the imams through prayer.
Oh, through prayer.
These are the imams of Islam, the 12 imams.
And they believe that they're
all
they're alive
dead. No, they're all supposed to be in heaven according to Muslims. And so I'm calling them because in Islam you can call, it's a lot like, Shias are a lot like Catholics. You can call saints.
Okay.
We call our imams.
All right.
That's what we did. And I called Allah, I called the imams, and nothing happened.
To help your brother.
Yeah. For about 10, 15 minutes. And finally I just gave up. I put my chin on my hand, and I didn't know what to do, and suddenly a thought came to my mind: pray to Jesus. And I don't know, at that time I don't know where the thought came from. I know now, but I didn't know where that thought came from. Here I am, I'm a Muslim, I've never prayed to Jesus, had high respect for him, loved him. I would tell everyone I love Jesus, but I had never prayed to him. So I had nothing to lose, and I did. I looked to the ceiling and said, Jesus, please make my brother take his medication. The minute I finished that sentence, my brother got up from the couch. He had not got up for 3 hours. We had pled with him for 3 hours. He didn't even visit the bathroom. He just sat there. And he got up, he went to the kitchen, I followed him, he took his medicine. And I'm saying, wow, Jesus is powerful. Here I am praying to all these imams, I named them one by one, and I prayed to Allah, nothing has happened. And I prayed to Jesus, simple prayer. And this happens, and here I am, a Muslim, I'm a Christian. And he answers me. And that kind of changed everything for me. Until the following year, when my mother went back to Iran, took my brother with her, and they went back to Iran, and my siblings and I were by ourselves, and we got odd jobs here at fast food restaurants here and there. And it's 1984, and I'm about 18 years old, and we all lose our jobs. But just before we lost our jobs, I have to say this, that I went out that night, and one night, and Friday night, my co-workers asked me, you want to go out with us? I said, okay. I've been a good Muslim boy all along. I didn't go partying or do any of these things. I went out with my friends. My mom said, be home at 11. I was home at 11. One time I came home at 15 minutes late. I got a slap right here in my face. My mom said, I told you be here at 11. And we always obeyed her.
You didn't smoke or drink?
No,
or
none of that.
carouse and go to the discos like I did when I was
No.
17, 18, 19,
Well,
wildlife.
Later on, some of that happened for me, later on. But at this point, that's when it started, when I went out with these American friends. And I did things that I had never done in my life. So when I came back home that night, that morning, actually I stayed out all night, came home at 6 in the morning. My conscience was just...
smiting you.
Oh, I was just being beaten. And nothing could make me feel better. Nothing. Nobody was home. My sister stayed with her friends and my brothers were out. And I laid in my bed, couldn't sleep, and I just kept pleading with Allah, asking Him to forgive me. And I used the word astaghfirullah, which means Allah, forgive me. And I said it 50 times at least. And with each prayer, I would bite my hand or my tongue in order to appease Allah, to put pain on myself so He would forgive me. And I did that for a good while. And nothing happened. The conscience was just as bothersome as it was before, if not worse. And finally I quit, and I just fell on the ground weeping. And now I'm no longer calling Allah. Now I'm praying in Farsi, and I'm saying Khuda. Before I was saying the Arabic word Allah, but now I was saying Khuda. Khuda in Persian is a neutral name for God. It could be the Jewish God, it could be the Christian God, it could be the Buddhist God, it could be any God. It's just like the English word God. And that's when God answered my prayer. When I called Him with a neutral name, suddenly a presence was in my room that I had never experienced in my life. More holy, more powerful than anything. I had never even experienced that.
And again, how old are you?
I'm 18 at this
You're
time.
18, and this is the morning after.
Yeah, morning after.
your
I
long
didn't drink any alcohol. I didn't do that, and I had not smoked any or anything that was drugs or anything. I was
So it
totally
was like,
sober
what,
and
6 in the
clean.
morning, 7
6
in the morning?
about 6:30, 7 in the morning, and I went to the bathroom. And this presence in the room was so powerful, so intense, full of love and mercy and gentleness.
Really?
And it was like a wave. My whole room was filled with this thick atmosphere of wave after wave coming and hitting me upon my chest. Wave after wave. Wave after wave of holiness and purity and love and mercy and infinite power. But somehow I was preserved. And I left the room because I felt inadequate. When I threw water in my
Nobody was
face.
in the room with you. I mean, as far as your brothers.
Nobody was in
or-
the house at all, in the apartment. No one. I was all by myself. I went back there, and he was still there.
in the room.
Yes, and then I went back, threw more water, came back, and it was gone. Then I realized my conscience is free. I felt no guilt for my sins I'd committed previous evening. I did not ask for forgiveness for my life of sin, only for that night. And God gave me a glimpse of His mercy, and He forgave me for that night. But He was not done with me.
You were just starting.
The following day, when I said my Salah prayer, Muslim prayer, I did all my ritual cleansing, I put my rug out and I went to pray, and I said my prayer, and I sensed this is meaningless. For the first time in my life, it dawned on me, what am I doing? My prayer is not going higher than the ceiling over my head. So I put away the grog and I prayed with my mother's tongue in Persian. My mom had said, if the Muslim prayer doesn't respond to you, say a prayer in your mother tongue, because you need to understand what you're saying to God. Because all Muslims just recite the Arabic words. They don't know, most of them don't know what they're saying. They just memorize it. And
It's
then
just like a rote.
just
you're saying
exactly.
the words, but
just saying it like a chant, like a rote, and because we
have you
expect
ever
it.
sensed in the past at all answers to prayer?
Never before that. Never before I
You
did.
mentioned that one time
Only when
with
I
your
cried
brother
to Christ.
concerning your brother and his medicine.
That was the
then
only time.
There was a
And that was
definite-
Jesus who answered my prayer. I mean, and never anything else besides that. That was the first time I had a real prayer answered, a real answer to my prayer. And also, here I prayed and my prayer was not successful. Anyways, I went through a series of downfalls as far as depression. I'm not a depressed person, but I was seeking God. I felt God has left me because here I'm praying as a Muslim, no response. I'm praying in my mother tongue, no response. God was withholding everything from me because He had given me a slice of His mercy and grace. And now He said, but I'm not taking it because you need to find me. Seek me and you will find me. And I didn't know that at that time. So I asked my Christian friends, there were no mosques. Please help me find let me talk to your priest, to your pastor. They need to help me because I'm emotionally in need to finding God. I don't know where God is. And that was so depressing for me. And eventually I came to a point where I was getting worse and worse. My Muslim friends were trying to help me. They were trying to find Christians to help me. And one day I was in a friend's home, and at this point we were homeless now. We lost all of us, we lost our jobs, my siblings and I. And within a month we were out in the streets, homeless. My brother lived in a car, my sister lived in a friend's house.
Wow. And you
my-
go into more details in
my book.
Your book, Two Sacrifices, One Destiny, Shabaz's story. The subtitle here is The Inspiring Journey of a Man from Islam to Christianity. This book is available from White Horse Media, and we'll talk about that more later. And Shabaz, as you're going along, I'm just thinking, just sitting here listening, we might need to do a My Journey to Peace Part 2.
Probably.
And so if you don't have enough time to get all this in the next 5 minutes,
I think
we
I can finish it.
you can go a little bit more, and we can come back to it. But anyway,
fine. Because
going.
I'm very close to that ultimate experience with Christ.
Okay.
And at this point, my brother called me one day and said, we're homeless. My brother called me because some
That
Muslim.
was because your dad lost his job.
they
right?
lost everything. We lost everything in the revolution, and we were just didn't have anything. And my brother calls me. We stayed with our friends sometimes in their cars, in their homes,
Wow.
sometimes in Denny's all night. And my brother called me and said, Shabaz, I found this Christian guy on the street. You should talk to him. And my friend grabs the phone. He says, yes, you need to talk to him. So next day, they made an appointment. Next day I went to Walnut Creek and on Main Street there. And this young 18-year-old, I'm 18, he's 18, he comes to me. And he begins to talk to me, and I told him what my problem is. And I felt I was trapped in a concrete box with no doors and no windows. That's how dark I felt in my mind. And he began to break the bread of life. He began to tell me who Jesus is to him. That I had never experienced before.
And you were how old at this point?
I'm 18.
Still 18.
And he begins to tell me, and as he and I walk south on Main Street, going on the southern direction, he begins to break the bread of life. And the more he says, the more free I feel. I feel somebody's breaking this box apart. The beams of sun was just shining upon me. The light of heaven was right upon me. I was so filled with his peace as he was breaking the bread of life.
And you just met him on the street.
I just met him. In fact, the night before, I had decided that once he blesses me, because he was going to bless me so I can come back to my senses, and then I was going to do him a favor and make him a Muslim. That was I had sincerely made that decision that I was going to convert this Christian to Islam. But that never happened. Not only that didn't happen, at the end of the 10-minute walk, he says, will you give your heart to Jesus? And I said, what do I do? He said, pray with me. So he prayed with me, he read a verse and he prayed with me. And I prayed I never prayed like that before. And then he said to me, congratulations, you're a Christian now. And I looked around and I said, everything has changed.
Do you remember what that verse was?
I can't remember the verse, unfortunately.
It's okay.
But everything had changed. Everything that was depressing had become full of joy. The sky was bluer than ever before. The trees were greener than ever before. Even ugly people were beautiful to me. And I thanked them, and I ran with all my heart to the cafe where all my Muslim friends were there. I was going to tell them that I became a Christian. I did. And they told me, "What's wrong with you? You lost your mind? You're a Muslim. You can't talk like this." And they couldn't do anything to change me. Jesus had delivered me from the darkest hour of my life. For more than a month I was in that condition. And God gave me the victory. And I accepted Christ. And I became a Christian. I didn't go to any church immediately because I didn't know where to go. But that's for another story for another time. But that was my experience. And I just want to say something to the viewers for 10 seconds.
Talk to them.
And I want to tell you, brothers and sisters, whoever you are, wherever you are, whether you're Muslim or not, I just want to tell you that what Christ did for me, He can do for you. I know many of you are in the same darkness that I was at that time. And I can tell you this, Christ didn't just find me, He is ready to find anyone. And He is at the door of your heart knocking. I invite you with all my heart to accept His call and let Him do for you what He has done for me. The peace He gave me, He has never taken it away from me. I am filled with His joy and His peace unto this day, and I know in whom I believe, and I know you can believe in Him too.
Wow, it's interesting that you would say He's knocking, because I'm thinking this is unscripted. I mean, we haven't gone through all this in detail, and as you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, we're getting near the end of this program, and I need to find a Bible verse to share. And the thought came to me to read the verse about the knocking.
Amen.
Which was just right when I thought of that before you said it, and there you said it. And so I'm going to read this. This is from Revelation chapter 3, verse 20. These are the words of Jesus. Jesus says, "Behold, I stand at the door and I knock. If any man hears my voice and opens the door," which is the door to the heart, "I will come into him, and I will sup with him, and he with me." Shabazz has experienced the power of Jesus coming into his life. I experienced the same thing, very similar. I felt this presence come into my life. I felt a peace and a joy like I'd never known when I opened the door of my heart and let Jesus come in. And so we just want to extend an invitation to you that God loves you, whoever you are. This program is good news for Muslims. It's good news for Jews, for everybody. And Jesus is knocking right now to come into your life.
We hope you enjoyed watching Good News for Muslims with Steve Wohlberg and Shabazz. This entire 13-part series is now available on DVD. To order from within the U.S., call White Horse Media at 1-800-782-4253. To watch the series online or for more information, visit the website www.goodnewsformuslims.com.